My name is Rachel, and at 35 years old, I never expected my own father to text me, "You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot. Don't show your ungrateful face here." I'm a licensed nurse practitioner who built my career from the ground up in Denver, Colorado, working double shifts to put myself through nursing school while my younger brother Tyler lived rent-free in our family home. When I received that message on a Tuesday morning while reviewing patient charts, something inside me shattered completely. For 8 years, I had been quietly paying my parents' mortgage, covering their medical bills, and funding my brother's endless series of failed business ventures. That day, I decided enough was enough. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. If you've ever been the family ATM while being treated like the family disappointment, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My story might give you the courage to finally put yourself first, even when it means disappointing the people who should love you unconditionally. Let me paint you the full picture of what led to this moment, because the text message was just the tip of an iceberg that had been building for nearly a decade. I had been the invisible daughter, the one who solved problems behind the scenes while my brother Tyler received all the praise and attention. While he dropped out of college 3 times and bounced between get-rich-quick schemes, I was working night shifts at St. Joseph's Hospital, studying for my nurse practitioner boards, and somehow still finding time to manage my parents' entire financial life. My father, Robert, had always been a proud man. He worked construction for 30 years until a back injury forced him into early retirement when I was 27. My mother, Linda, had been a part-time bookkeeper at a small accounting firm, but her hours were cut significantly during the 2016 recession. Together, they were bringing in maybe $2,000 a month from disability and part-time work, trying to maintain a 4-bedroom house in Lakewood with a mortgage payment of $1,800. The math simply didn't work. That's when I stepped in. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I couldn't watch my parents lose their home. I had just landed my first job as a nurse practitioner with a salary that finally felt comfortable after years of scraping by. Without making a big announcement, I started covering their mortgage payments. Then their car insurance when Dad's truck payment became too much. Then their utilities when winter heating bills spiked. Then Tyler's rent when he moved into his own apartment, claiming he needed space to focus on his latest entrepreneurial venture. Over the years, my financial support expanded like water, filling every available space. Their health insurance premiums after Dad's injury raised their rates. Property taxes that kept climbing in our gentrifying neighborhood. Credit card payments that accumulated from years of living beyond their means. Car repairs, home maintenance, groceries when money ran short at the end of the month. Emergency room visits that insurance didn't fully cover. And always, another loan for Tyler's businesses that never seemed to turn a profit. I kept meticulous records in a spreadsheet that I updated monthly, watching the numbers climb higher each year. 24,000 in 2018. 31,000 in 2019. 38,000 in 2020. By 2023, I was contributing over $45,000 annually to my family's expenses, nearly half my take-home pay as a nurse practitioner. That's more than many people make in an entire year, flowing from my accounts to theirs every single month without acknowledgement, appreciation, or even basic respect. The irony was brutal. While I was working 50-hour weeks, covering night shifts, and managing complex patient cases, Tyler was sleeping until noon and spending his days playing video games or working on his latest business idea that would definitely make him rich this time. A food truck that failed within 3 months. A drop-shipping business that never shipped anything. A cryptocurrency trading scheme that lost what little money he had invested. Each failure was met with understanding and support from our parents, while my steady, reliable success was taken for granted. Family gatherings became exercises in walking on eggshells. Tyler's girlfriend would join us for dinner, talking about their plans to travel to Thailand once his next business took off. Meanwhile, I'd mention working overtime to afford a weekend trip to visit college friends, and Dad would make comments about how some people have money to burn while others are struggling. The cognitive dissonance was staggering, but I convinced myself that family meant sacrificing for each other without keeping score. The breaking point came not from the money, though the financial strain was becoming unsustainable. It came from a conversation I overheard during my nephew's birthday party 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I had arrived early to help set up decorations and walked into the kitchen where my parents were talking quietly while arranging food. "Rachel thinks she's so much better than us now," my mother was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone of resentment I'd learned to recognize. "Always talking about her patients and her continuing education credits. She acts like we should be grateful she has a good job. She's gotten uppity since she became a nurse practitioner," Dad agreed. "Remember when she used to be humble? Now she corrects people about medical stuff like she's some kind of doctor. It's embarrassing at family gatherings. Tyler's struggling, and all she does is judge his choices," Mom continued. "At least he's trying to build something for himself instead of just following orders all day like she does. He has vision and creativity." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I stood frozen in the hallway, holding a bag of party favors, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. This was how they talked about me when I wasn't around. The daughter who worked nights and weekends to keep their house from foreclosure was uppity and embarrassing. The son who hadn't held a steady job in 5 years was visionary and creative. That night, I went home to my modest one-bedroom apartment and looked around at the simple furniture I'd bought secondhand, the walls I hadn't repainted in 3 years because I was too busy working, the vacation photos I didn't have because I couldn't afford trips after supporting my family. I realized I had been living like a college student while financing my family's middle-class lifestyle, and they resented me for having opinions and expertise in my own field. The Thanksgiving text came exactly 3 weeks later, and it wasn't really about Thanksgiving at all. It was about a daughter who had forgotten her place in the family hierarchy, who had gotten too comfortable expressing her thoughts and sharing her knowledge, who needed to be reminded that her value lay in what she could provide, not who she was as a person. But this time, instead of apologizing and trying harder to earn their approval, I felt something different. A clarity I hadn't experienced in years. A recognition that I had been enabling a dynamic that was destroying my own sense of self-worth while preventing my family from taking responsibility for their own choices. That Tuesday morning, sitting in my small office at the medical clinic, surrounded by patient files and the steady hum of a workplace where my expertise was valued and respected, I made a decision that would change everything. If I was truly as ungrateful and uppity as they believed, then perhaps it was time to show them what grateful actually looked like. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their dysfunction, even when they call you names for setting boundaries. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to step away from relationships that require you to diminish yourself to maintain peace. And sometimes, the family you build through work colleagues, friends, and chosen relationships is more supportive than the family you were born into. This is the story of how I learned to value myself enough to stop accepting unacceptable treatment, even from the people who were supposed to love me most. It's about discovering that being called ungrateful by people who never showed gratitude says everything about them and nothing about you. And it's about finding the courage to build a life based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. If you've ever felt like the family ATM, the one who gives everything and receives criticism in return, this story is for you. Because you deserve relationships that celebrate your success instead of resenting it, that appreciate your contributions instead of taking them for granted, and that value you for who you are, not just what you can provide. Growing up in the suburban neighborhoods of Lakewood, Colorado, our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. We lived in a charming 2-story brick house with a manicured front lawn, complete with the white picket fence that Dad had installed himself one summer when I was 12. Robert worked construction during the week and spent weekends teaching Tyler how to throw a football in our backyard, while Linda maintained the household with the precision of a military operation. To neighbors and extended family, we were the embodiment of middle-class American success. But behind our front door, a different story was unfolding. From my earliest memories, it was crystal clear that Tyler held a special position in our family constellation that I could never hope to occupy. Born 18 months apart, we should have been typical siblings with the usual rivalry and camaraderie. Instead, our childhood was defined by a stark double standard that shaped every interaction and expectation. When Tyler was 7 and accidentally broke Mom's favorite ceramic vase while playing indoor soccer, the incident became a family story we'd laugh about for years. "Boys will be boys," Dad would chuckle, ruffling Tyler's hair as Mom swept up the pieces with an indulgent smile. "He's just got so much energy. That kid's going to be a professional athlete someday." When I was 8 and accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice at breakfast, staining the tablecloth Mom had inherited from her grandmother, I spent the next hour scrubbing the fabric while listening to a lecture about being more careful and considerate of other people's belongings. This pattern established itself early and remained consistent throughout our childhood. Tyler's report cards, dotted with C's and D's, were met with encouragement about how smart he was and how he just needed to find his passion. My straight A's were acknowledged with a brief, "good job," before the conversation quickly shifted to whatever Tyler was struggling with that needed family attention and support. When Tyler quit Little League after 2 weeks because he didn't like the coach, Dad spent an hour explaining that not every authority figure understands creative minds. When I wanted to quit piano lessons after 3 years of diligent practice because I wanted to try volleyball, I was told that quitting was for people who didn't understand commitment. The most telling example came when I was 15 and Tyler was 13. I had been working as a mother's helper for the Johnson family down the street, earning $20 a week helping with their toddler twins after school. I was saving every penny for a used car, keeping my earnings in a shoebox under my bed with meticulous records of every dollar. Tyler discovered my stash one afternoon and took $40 to buy a skateboard he'd been wanting. When I confronted him, he claimed he was just borrowing it and would pay me back from his allowance. When I told our parents what had happened, their response revealed everything about our family dynamics. Mom's immediate concern was that Tyler felt bad about being caught, not that he had stolen from his sister. Dad's solution was for me to be more understanding about Tyler's impulsive nature, and to keep my money in the bank like a responsible person should. No one suggested that Tyler should return the skateboard or work to repay the money. Instead, I was lectured about the importance of forgiveness and family loyalty. Tyler never paid me back, and the skateboard incident became another family story about his adventurous spirit. School became my refuge and my battleground. While Tyler coasted through his classes with minimal effort and maximum parental support, I threw myself into academics with the intensity of someone trying to prove their worth through achievement. I joined every club that would have me, volunteered for extra credit assignments, and maintained a perfect attendance record even when I was sick. My teachers loved me, my grades were exemplary, and my guidance counselor regularly praised my work ethic and potential. But at home, these achievements felt invisible. Parent-teacher conferences about Tyler's failing grades became family emergencies requiring hours of discussion and strategy sessions. My academic awards were acknowledged briefly before conversation returned to Tyler's needs. When I was selected for the National Honor Society my junior year, the celebration dinner lasted about 10 minutes before Dad started worrying about Tyler's upcoming chemistry test. The summer before my senior year, I got a job at a local medical clinic filing paperwork and answering phones. It was there that I first encountered the healthcare field, watching the nurses move through their days with competence and purpose. Mrs. Patterson, the head nurse, took me under her wing and started explaining basic medical terminology and procedures. For the first time in my life, I felt seen and valued for my intelligence and attention to detail. "You have natural instincts for this work," Mrs. Patterson told me one afternoon as I helped organize patient charts. "Have you ever considered nursing? You'd be excellent at it." The validation was intoxicating. Here was an adult who noticed my strengths and encouraged my potential, something that rarely happened at home. That fall, while I was researching nursing programs and filling out college applications, Tyler was failing his sophomore year and showing no interest in his future beyond the next video game release. Yet somehow, our dinner conversations consistently centered around his needs and challenges. Mom worried constantly about his self-esteem and social development. Dad spent weekends taking him to various activities, hoping to find something that would capture his interest and motivation. Meanwhile, my college planning happened largely in isolation. I researched scholarship opportunities, wrote essays, and scheduled campus visits without much family input or support. When I received acceptance letters, including a partial scholarship to Colorado State University's nursing program, the celebration was muted. Mom's first comment was concern about how we'd afford the remaining tuition. Dad's was whether I was sure I wanted to be just a nurse, when I was smart enough to be a doctor. The message was clear: my success was expected and therefore unremarkable, while Tyler's struggles required constant family attention and resources. My achievements were stepping stones to greater expectations, while his failures were challenges that needed collective problem-solving and support. During my senior year, as I worked part-time at the clinic and maintained my grades while applying for additional scholarships, Tyler's academic situation continued to deteriorate. He was skipping classes regularly, his grades had dropped to mostly Fs, and he'd been caught smoking marijuana behind the school gymnasium. Each incident prompted family meetings where Mom and Dad discussed therapy options, alternative schools, and whether Tyler might have an undiagnosed learning disability that was causing his problems. No one suggested that Tyler might simply be choosing not to apply himself. No one mentioned that I had succeeded in the same school system with the same teachers and the same resources. The assumption was always that Tyler's failures were due to external circumstances or hidden challenges, never personal responsibility or lack of effort. The contrast became even more stark during graduation season. I graduated as salutatorian, received multiple awards for academic achievement and community service, and had been accepted to nursing school with enough scholarships to cover most of my tuition. Tyler barely graduated, having to make up credits through summer school and online courses. Yet somehow, our graduation celebrations felt equally momentous in our parents' eyes. Tyler's ability to graduate at all was treated as a major victory requiring the same level of celebration as my academic excellence. Looking back now, I can see how those formative years established the blueprint for our adult relationship. I learned that my value lay in achievement and self-sufficiency, that my role was to solve problems and exceed expectations without requiring acknowledgement or support. Tyler learned that his value was inherent, that his struggles deserved attention and resources, and that his potential was always just one opportunity away from being realized. These patterns felt normal because they were all I knew. It wasn't until much later that I began to understand how unusual it was for parents to consistently prioritize one child's needs over another's achievements, or to treat success as an expectation while treating failure as a family emergency requiring collective intervention. The foundation was set during those childhood years for everything that would follow: my compulsive need to prove my worth through sacrifice and achievement, Tyler's comfortable assumption that family resources should flow in his direction, and our parents' belief that supporting Tyler was a family obligation while supporting me was unnecessary because I was already doing fine. As I prepared to leave for college that summer, packing my belongings and preparing to start my adult life, I felt both excited about my future and somehow guilty about leaving my family behind. I had internalized the message that my success was expected and unremarkable, while Tyler's continued struggles would require ongoing family attention and support. I was stepping into independence, while he remained the focus of parental concern and investment. What I didn't realize then was how these early dynamics would shape the next decade of our family relationships, creating patterns of expectation and entitlement that would eventually lead to that devastating text message 15 years later. The little girl who learned to value herself through achievement and self-sacrifice was about to become the adult daughter who would fund her family's lifestyle while receiving criticism for her success. College marked the beginning of our paths diverging in ways that would define the next chapter of our family dynamics. I threw myself into my nursing studies at Colorado State University with the same intensity one had brought to high school academics, but now with the added pressure of proving that my parents' modest investment in my education would pay off. I carried a full course load, worked 25 hours a week at the campus health center, and maintained a 3.8 GPA while living in the cheapest dorm available and surviving on ramen noodles and determination. Meanwhile, Tyler enrolled at Front Range Community College with plans to study business administration, though his attendance was sporadic at best. Within the first semester, he had changed his major twice, dropped 3 courses, and was spending most of his time playing intramural sports and attending parties. Our parents received regular calls from academic advisors expressing concern about his performance, each conversation resulting in family strategy sessions about how to better support Tyler's educational journey. During winter break of my freshman year, the contrast between our college experiences became painfully apparent. I spent my vacation working extra shifts at a local urgent care clinic to earn money for textbooks and spring semester expenses. Tyler spent his break sleeping until noon, playing video games, and complaining about how community college wasn't challenging enough for someone with his entrepreneurial mindset. When I suggested he might try studying harder or attending classes more regularly, Mom quickly redirected the conversation, explaining that Tyler was still adjusting to college life and needed encouragement, not criticism. By spring semester, Tyler had dropped out entirely. The official reason given to extended family was that he wanted to take some time to explore his options and find his true passion. The reality was that he had failed most of his courses and owed the college money for classes he had stopped attending without officially withdrawing. Dad spent hours on the phone with financial aid offices trying to sort out Tyler's academic record, while Mom researched alternative educational paths that might better suit his learning style. My own college experience continued to follow a trajectory of steady progress and increasing responsibility. I had been selected for a competitive clinical rotation program that placed me in some of Denver's most prestigious hospitals. My professors regularly commented on my clinical skills and attention to detail. By my junior year, I was working as a tutor for struggling nursing students and had been offered a position as a teaching assistant for anatomy and physiology courses. But these achievements felt hollow when shared with my family. During our weekly phone calls, Mom would spend most of the time updating me on Tyler's latest plans and asking for my advice on how to help him find direction. When I mentioned my clinical rotations or academic honors, the conversations quickly shifted back to Tyler's situation. It was as if my success was expected and therefore unremarkable, while Tyler's struggles required constant family attention and problem solving. The summer after my junior year, I landed an internship at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital that paid well enough to cover my senior year tuition costs. I was working in the cardiac unit under the supervision of experienced nurse practitioners, gaining invaluable clinical experience while earning enough money to graduate debt-free. I felt proud of my financial independence and the respect I had earned from healthcare professionals who valued my competence and work ethic. Tyler, meanwhile, had announced his intention to start his own business. The idea changed weekly, from a lawn care service to a personal training company to a food delivery startup. Each new venture was met with enthusiasm from our parents, who saw his entrepreneurial spirit as evidence of his eventual success. The fact that none of these businesses progressed beyond the idea stage was attributed to Tyler's perfectionism and high standards rather than his lack of follow-through or practical planning. During family dinners that summer, I found myself increasingly frustrated by the disconnect between my family's perception of our respective situations and the reality I was experiencing. Tyler would spend an hour explaining his latest business concept, receiving engaged questions and supportive feedback from our parents. When I shared stories from my hospital internship or discussed my plans for nurse practitioner school, the conversation felt perfunctory and brief. The most revealing moment came during our annual 4th of July barbecue. Extended family members were asking about our plans and achievements, as relatives tend to do during holiday gatherings. Tyler confidently described his entrepreneurial ventures and spoke about his vision for building a business empire. Our parents beamed with pride as he outlined his ambitious goals and creative thinking. When attention turned to me, I mentioned my hospital internship and my acceptance into the nurse practitioner program for the following year. Aunt Sarah asked about my career goals, and I began explaining my interest in family medicine and my hope to eventually work in an underserved community clinic. Dad interrupted after less than 2 minutes, redirecting the conversation to Tyler's latest business idea and asking Uncle Mike for advice about small business loans. The message was clear: Tyler's hypothetical future success was more interesting and worthy of family attention than my actual current achievements. His potential was celebrated while my proven track record was taken for granted. I excused myself early that evening, claiming I had to work the next day, but really needing space to process the hurt and frustration I was feeling. Senior year brought new challenges and responsibilities. I was accepted into an accelerated nurse practitioner program that would allow me to complete my graduate degree in 18 months instead of the typical 2 years. The program was competitive and demanding, requiring clinical rotations at multiple hospitals and intensive coursework in advanced pathophysiology and pharmacology. I was thriving in the academic environment and building relationships with mentors who saw my potential and encouraged my professional development. Tyler's situation continued to deteriorate. His latest business venture, a landscaping company, had folded after 3 months when he realized the physical demands of the work were more than he had anticipated. He moved back into our childhood bedroom and spent his days playing online games and researching new business opportunities on the internet. Mom had started leaving articles about successful entrepreneurs on his desk, hoping to inspire him to find his niche. The financial implications of our different paths were becoming increasingly apparent. I was earning a modest but steady income through my clinical work and teaching assistant position, enough to cover my living expenses and graduate school costs. Tyler was contributing nothing to household expenses while consuming significant family resources through food, utilities, phone service, and car insurance for a vehicle he rarely used for anything productive. During winter break of my senior year, I overheard a conversation between my parents that crystallized my growing awareness of the family financial dynamics. Dad was expressing concern about their ability to help Tyler get back on his feet while maintaining their own expenses. Mom suggested they might need to consider downsizing their house or cutting back on their retirement contributions to free up money for Tyler's next business attempt. Neither of them mentioned the possibility of Tyler getting a regular job or contributing to household expenses. The assumption was that supporting Tyler's entrepreneurial dreams was a family investment, while my education and career development were individual responsibilities. The conversation revealed how deeply embedded the double standard had become in our family's financial planning and future expectations. Spring semester brought the stress of completing my undergraduate degree while applying for nurse practitioner programs and preparing for nursing board exams. I was working long hours at the hospital, studying for comprehensive exams, and managing clinical rotations that required precise attention to detail and quick decision-making. The pressure was intense, but I felt energized by the challenge and confident in my abilities. At the same time, Tyler announced his newest business idea, a food truck specializing in gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches. He had developed an elaborate business plan complete with menu designs and location strategies. Our parents were immediately supportive, discussing startup costs and offering to help him research food service permits and health department requirements. The contrast was striking. While I was working 60-hour weeks to establish my career in a demanding field that required years of education and training, Tyler was being celebrated for yet another untested business concept that would likely join the growing list of his abandoned ventures. The attention and support he received for his theoretical entrepreneurship far exceeded any recognition I had received for my actual professional accomplishments. Graduation day arrived with mixed emotions. I had achieved my goal of completing nursing school with honors while graduating debt-free, an accomplishment that represented 4 years of disciplined work and sacrifice. I had already been accepted into nurse practitioner school and had lined up a position at Denver General Hospital that would provide excellent experience while allowing me to attend graduate classes. The graduation ceremony felt bittersweet. My parents attended and expressed pride in my achievement, but their attention seemed divided. During the reception afterward, they spent significant time discussing Tyler's food truck plans with other family members, presenting his upcoming venture as equally noteworthy as my nursing degree. I felt simultaneously grateful for their presence and frustrated by their inability to fully focus on my accomplishment. That summer, as I prepared to start my career as a registered nurse while beginning graduate school, Tyler was busy developing his food truck concept. He had convinced our parents to co-sign a small business loan for $25,000 to purchase and outfit a used food truck. The family's financial resources were being stretched to support his latest venture, while my transition into professional healthcare was expected to be self-funded and self-managed. The pattern was now fully established. Tyler's unproven potential received significant family investment and attention, while my demonstrated competence and steady progress were treated as expected and unremarkable. The entrepreneurial dreams that existed only on paper were more celebrated than the professional reality I was building through hard work and proven ability. As I started my first job as a registered nurse that fall, working 12-hour shifts in a busy emergency department while attending graduate classes, I felt both proud of my accomplishments and increasingly isolated from my family's priorities and values. The foundation was being laid for the financial support system that would define the next phase of our relationship, though I didn't yet understand how unsustainable and one-sided that arrangement would become. The transformation from occasional family helper to primary financial provider happened so gradually that I barely noticed it at first. It started 3 years into my career as a registered nurse when Dad called me on a Thursday evening, his voice heavy with worry. He had been experiencing chest pains at work and went to the emergency room, fearing another heart episode like the one that had hospitalized him briefly 2 years earlier. The tests came back normal, but the ER visit had cost them nearly $4,000 after insurance, money they simply didn't have. "I hate to ask this, Rachel," Dad said, his pride clearly wounded, but we're looking at putting this on a credit card that's already maxed out. I know you're doing well at the hospital, and I promise we'll pay you back as soon as we can figure things out." Without hesitation, I transferred the money that same night. The relief in his voice when I called back was worth every penny, and I felt good about being able to help when my family needed me. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly that single act of generosity would establish me as the family's financial safety net. Within 6 months, the requests became more frequent and the amounts larger. Tyler's food truck venture had failed spectacularly after just 2 months of operation. The health department had cited him for multiple violations, and he had underestimated both the physical demands of food service and the complexity of managing inventory and customer flow. The business loan payments remained, but the income had disappeared entirely. Mom called me in tears one evening, explaining that they couldn't cover both the business loan payment and their mortgage in the same month. "Tyler feels terrible about this," she assured me. "He's been looking for regular work, but you know how hard it is for someone with his entrepreneurial background to fit into a traditional job." I found myself writing another check, this time for $1,800, telling myself it was temporary assistance while Tyler got back on his feet. But Tyler's job search seemed to consist primarily of researching new business opportunities online. Within 3 months of the food truck failure, he had developed an elaborate plan for a house painting company that would focus on high-end residential properties. He had created detailed marketing materials, researched equipment costs, and even designed a company logo. Our parents were immediately supportive, viewing this as evidence that Tyler had learned from his previous mistakes and was ready to apply that experience to a more suitable venture. The house painting business required an initial investment of $15,000 for equipment, a work truck, and insurance. Tyler presented his business plan during Sunday dinner with the confidence of someone pitching to venture capitalists. He had calculated potential profits, identified target neighborhoods, and outlined his marketing strategy with impressive detail. Mom and Dad listened with the kind of focused attention they had never given to my nursing career achievements. "This is exactly the kind of business that plays to Tyler's strengths," Mom declared after his presentation. "He's always been creative and good with his hands, and the profit margins in home improvement are excellent." Dad nodded enthusiastically, already discussing how they could help with startup costs. The problem, of course, was that they had no money to invest after covering the ongoing food truck loan payments and their regular living expenses. That's when the conversation turned to me. "Rachel, you've always been so generous with family," Mom began carefully. "I know this is a big ask, but would you consider investing in Tyler's painting business? You'd be a silent partner, and Tyler estimates you could have your investment back within 18 months, plus a profit share." Tyler jumped in eagerly, explaining how my contribution would be treated as a business loan with formal repayment terms, not a gift. I found myself agreeing, partly because Tyler's enthusiasm was infectious and partly because I wanted to believe that this time would be different. The business plan looked professional, and Tyler seemed genuinely committed to making it work. I wrote a check for $15,000 and accepted Tyler's handwritten promissory note, complete with a repayment schedule that would begin 6 months after the business launch. The painting business lasted 4 months. Tyler quickly discovered that the physical demands of painting houses in Colorado's variable weather were more challenging than he had anticipated. More problematically, his customer service skills were lacking, and he had difficulty managing multiple projects simultaneously. After receiving several complaints about incomplete work and missed deadlines, he decided to close the business rather than risk damaging his reputation further. The equipment was sold at a significant loss, generating about $6,000 toward outstanding debts. Tyler moved back into his childhood bedroom, this time with the additional burden of 2 failed business loans and no realistic plan for repayment. Our parents' response was to encourage him to take some time to recover from the stress of entrepreneurship before deciding on his next career move. Meanwhile, my own financial situation was becoming increasingly strained. In addition to the $15,000 business investment that was now a total loss, I had been covering more and more of my parents' regular expenses. Dad's back problems had worsened, reducing his ability to work consistently. Mom's hours at the accounting firm had been cut as the company struggled with economic uncertainty. Their monthly income barely covered their basic living expenses, leaving no room for unexpected costs or debt payments. I started receiving calls about different bills each month. The car insurance was due and they were short $200. The property taxes had increased and they needed $800 to avoid late fees. Dad's prescription medications weren't fully covered by insurance, creating a monthly shortfall of $300. Each request was presented as a temporary need with promises of repayment when their financial situation improved. My nursing salary was good, especially after completing my nurse practitioner degree and transitioning to a role at a family medicine clinic. I was earning $75,000 annually, enough to live comfortably in my one-bedroom apartment while saving for future goals. But the steady stream of family financial requests was making it impossible to build any meaningful savings or plan for my own future needs. The breaking point in this phase came when Tyler announced his third business venture, a drop-shipping company that would sell outdoor gear online. He had spent weeks researching products and suppliers, creating what looked like a sophisticated e-commerce operation. The startup costs were lower than his previous ventures, requiring only $5,000 for initial inventory and website development. "This is perfect for Tyler," Mom explained during our weekly phone call. "He can work from home, which is better for his back problems, and the profit margins on outdoor gear are incredible. Plus, with all the people getting into hiking and camping during the pandemic, the timing couldn't be better." She paused before continuing with the request I had learned to expect. "We were wondering if you might be willing to help with the startup costs, just until the business starts generating cash flow." I found myself saying yes again, despite my growing awareness that these investments were actually gifts that would never be repaid. Tyler's gratitude was genuine, and he spent an hour showing me his business plan and explaining how this venture would finally allow him to repay all his previous debts. The drop-shipping business seemed more realistic than his previous attempts, with lower overhead costs and the flexibility to operate from home. 6 months later, the drop-shipping business had generated exactly $300 in revenue while consuming over $8,000 in total costs. Tyler had underestimated the competition in outdoor gear retail and overestimated his ability to drive traffic to his website. He had also failed to account for the time and expertise required to manage customer service, inventory tracking, and returns processing. By this point, I was contributing over $3,000 monthly to my family's expenses through a combination of direct bill payments and emergency assistance. I had taken over their mortgage payments entirely after Dad's work injuries made his income too unreliable to qualify for loan modifications. Their car payments, insurance premiums, utility bills, and medical expenses had all become my responsibility through a series of individual crises that somehow never resolved. Tyler's living situation had settled into a comfortable routine where he managed household tasks like grocery shopping and lawn maintenance while our parents worked their reduced-hour jobs. The arrangement was presented as temporary, just until Tyler's next business venture got off the ground, but I was beginning to understand that it had become a permanent lifestyle subsidized entirely by my nursing income. The most painful aspect of this dynamic was how my financial contributions had become expected rather than appreciated. Phone calls home no longer included updates about my work achievements or personal life. Instead, conversations focused on upcoming bills, Tyler's latest business research, and family concerns about making ends meet. My role had evolved from daughter and sister to primary breadwinner, with all the responsibility but none of the authority or respect that typically accompanies that position. I started keeping detailed spreadsheets tracking every payment I made for family expenses. The numbers were staggering when calculated annually. Mortgage payments totaling $21,600. Utility bills averaging $4,800 yearly. Car payments and insurance adding up to $14,400. Medical expenses, prescription costs, and emergency repairs contributing another $8,000. Tyler's failed business investments had cost me over $35,000 in 3 years. The total annual amount I was contributing to my family's finances was $48,000, nearly 2/3 of my take-home pay as a nurse practitioner. I was living like a recent college graduate while funding a middle-class lifestyle for 4 adults, one of whom had never contributed meaningfully to household expenses despite being perfectly capable of working. What made the situation even more unsustainable was the complete lack of acknowledgement or appreciation for these contributions. Tyler talked confidently about his next business ideas as if his previous failures were learning experiences rather than costly mistakes funded by my labor. Our parents discussed their financial stress as if it were an unavoidable natural disaster rather than the predictable result of supporting an adult child who refused to work consistently. The psychological toll of carrying this financial burden while being treated as an auxiliary family member was becoming harder to ignore. I was working 50-hour weeks in a demanding healthcare environment, managing complex patient cases and life-or-death decisions, then coming home to coordinate my family's bill payments and listen to Tyler's latest entrepreneurial theories. My own dreams of home ownership, travel, or building savings for my future had been postponed indefinitely to fund a lifestyle I couldn't afford for myself. The final piece of this unsustainable dynamic was the growing resentment I felt toward my own success. Every promotion at work meant more available income that my family assumed would flow in their direction. Every efficient month where I managed to avoid major family financial crises felt like a temporary reprieve rather than normal life. I had become so accustomed to financial stress and family dependency that I couldn't imagine what it would feel like to keep my own earnings for my own goals and dreams. The catalyst moment that would change everything started innocuously enough on a crisp October morning. I had just finished a particularly challenging week at the clinic, managing a caseload of diabetic patients while covering for a colleague who was out on medical leave. Working 12-hour days had become my normal routine, but this week had been especially demanding, with several patients requiring emergency interventions and complex medication adjustments. I was exhausted but felt good about the difference I was making in people's lives. That Saturday morning, I decided to treat myself to breakfast at Maple Street Cafe, a small restaurant near my apartment that I rarely visited due to my demanding schedule and tight budget. As I sat at a corner table, reviewing patient charts on my tablet while enjoying coffee and pancakes, I overheard a familiar laugh from across the restaurant. Looking up, I saw Tyler sitting at a booth with 3 friends I didn't recognize, all of them appearing relaxed and well-rested in the way that people without regular employment often do on weekend mornings. What struck me wasn't Tyler's presence at the restaurant, but the conversation I couldn't help but overhear as his voice carried across the small dining area. He was regaling his friends with stories about his latest business idea, a YouTube channel focused on cryptocurrency trading advice. According to Tyler's animated description, he had been researching crypto markets for months and had developed a foolproof system for identifying profitable trades. The thing about working for other people, Tyler was saying, his voice confident and dismissive, is that you're always going to be limited by someone else's vision. That's why I've never been able to stick with traditional jobs. My mind works differently, you know? I see opportunities that other people miss. His friends nodded appreciatively as he continued outlining his plans for building a following and monetizing his trading expertise. The irony was staggering. Here was Tyler, sitting in a restaurant at 10 in the morning on a Saturday, talking about his revolutionary approach to cryptocurrency while spending money he hadn't earned on a meal I was indirectly subsidizing through my payments for his housing, food, and living expenses. But what bothered me more than the financial aspect was his complete revision of reality. Tyler had never stuck with traditional jobs, because he had never seriously attempted to maintain traditional employment, not because his mind was too advanced for conventional work structures. As I listened to him describe his trading system to his impressed audience, I felt a familiar mixture of frustration and disbelief. Tyler's confidence in his own expertise was unshakable, despite his track record of costly failures in every business venture he had attempted. More troubling was his apparent belief that his unemployment was a choice reflecting his superior mindset rather than a pattern of avoiding responsibility and sustained effort. The conversation took a turn that made my stomach clench when one of Tyler's friends asked about his living situation. "Oh, I'm staying with my parents right now," Tyler replied casually. "It gives me the flexibility to focus on building my business without worrying about rent and utilities. My family is really supportive of my entrepreneurial goals. They understand that sometimes you have to invest in yourself before you can generate returns." The misrepresentation was breathtaking. Tyler wasn't staying with his parents as a temporary arrangement while building a business. He was unemployed and entirely dependent on family financial support that came primarily from my nursing income. His family support consisted of me working 50-hour weeks to pay for his housing, food, transportation, and living expenses while he researched get-rich-quick schemes online. But Tyler wasn't finished rewriting history. When another friend mentioned the challenges of starting a business without capital, Tyler nodded knowingly. "That's the beauty of my situation," he explained. "My family has always believed in my potential. They've invested in several of my previous ventures, and even though those didn't work out exactly as planned, they understand that entrepreneurship is about learning from experience. Not everyone has that kind of support system." I felt heat rising in my cheeks as Tyler transformed my involuntary financial subsidies into evidence of family investment in his potential. The $15,000 I had lost on his painting business wasn't an investment that hadn't worked out exactly as planned. It was money I had earned through exhausting 12-hour shifts caring for sick patients, money that Tyler had essentially burned through poor planning and lack of commitment. The $5,000 lost on his drop-shipping venture represented weeks of my life spent managing complex medical cases while Tyler played entrepreneur from his childhood bedroom. The final straw came when Tyler's friend asked about his long-term plans. "Honestly, I'm in no rush," Tyler replied with the confidence of someone who had never worried about paying bills or supporting himself. "I'd rather take my time and build something meaningful than settle for some dead-end job just to pay rent. My sister Rachel is a nurse, and she's always stressed about work and money. That's not the kind of life I want. I'd rather bet on myself and my abilities." The casual dismissal of my career and financial stress while simultaneously benefiting from my labor was the moment something fundamental shifted inside me. Tyler viewed my demanding, skilled profession as a dead-end job, while positioning his unemployment as an admirable commitment to his potential. He saw my financial stress, which was largely caused by supporting his lifestyle, as evidence of my poor life choices rather than the result of his dependency. I left the restaurant without finishing my breakfast, my hands shaking as I walked to my car. The conversation I had overheard revealed not just Tyler's complete lack of awareness about our family's financial reality, but his active reconstruction of that reality into a narrative where he was the visionary and I was the one making poor choices. In Tyler's version of events, my financial support was family investment in his potential rather than charity enabling his avoidance of responsibility. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house for our usual Sunday dinner, carrying the weight of Tyler's words and the growing awareness that my family's perception of our situation was fundamentally different from my own experience. The house looked the same as always, well-maintained and comfortable, showing no signs of the financial stress that would exist without my monthly contributions. Tyler was in the living room playing video games when I arrived, looking relaxed and content in a way that people with secure housing and no financial responsibilities often do. He greeted me cheerfully, making no mention of our proximity at the restaurant that morning. Mom was in the kitchen preparing an elaborate meal that would have been impossible on their actual household income, using ingredients and cooking in a home that my earnings made possible. During dinner, the conversation followed its usual pattern. Tyler enthusiastically described his latest research into cryptocurrency markets, explaining his theories about market trends and trading strategies with the confidence of someone who had never risked his own money on his investment ideas. Our parents listened with the same engaged attention they had given to his previous business concepts, asking questions and offering encouragement. When attention briefly turned to my work, I mentioned the challenging week I had just completed, the complex patient cases I had managed, and the satisfaction I felt when difficult interventions resulted in improved health outcomes. The conversation lasted perhaps 3 minutes before Mom redirected discussion to Tyler's YouTube channel plans and the potential for building a following in the cryptocurrency space. After dinner, as I helped Mom clear dishes, she mentioned their upcoming property tax bill with the casual tone she used for all financial discussions. "It's due next month," she said, loading plates into the dishwasher. $8,300 this year. The county reassessed all the properties in our neighborhood. The amount represented more than 2 weeks of my take-home pay, money I would need to earn through night shifts and weekend coverage while managing complex patient care responsibilities. Tyler thinks his YouTube channel could be generating income by then, Mom continued optimistically. He's been working so hard on his content strategy and market research. It's really exciting to see him so motivated and focused. The disconnect between Tyler's morning dismissal of traditional work and Mom's perception of his YouTube research as hard work was jarring, but no longer surprising. That evening, as I drove home to my modest apartment, I found myself calculating how many hours of patient care I would need to work to cover the property tax bill. $8,300 represented approximately 160 hours of my time, Merely a month of full-time work dedicated entirely to a tax bill for a house I didn't live in, supporting a family that viewed my career as inferior to Tyler's unemployment. The breaking point came the following Tuesday during what should have been a routine family phone call. I had just finished a particularly demanding shift that included 2 emergency situations requiring rapid intervention and precise clinical judgment. An elderly patient had gone into cardiac arrest during a routine appointment, and I had successfully coordinated his resuscitation and stabilization before transfer to the hospital. Another patient, a young mother with diabetes, had come in with dangerously high blood sugar levels that required immediate treatment and extensive education about medication management. I felt energized by the work despite the physical and emotional demands. These were the moments that reminded me why I had chosen healthcare, when my skills and knowledge made a real difference in people's lives. I was reviewing notes from the day when Dad called, his voice carrying the familiar tone that preceded financial requests. "Rachel, we got some news today that's got us worried," he began. "The furnace inspection turned up some problems that need to be fixed before winter. The repair estimate is $3,200, and our savings account just isn't enough to cover it." He paused, and I could hear Mom talking in the background about the importance of having heat during Colorado winters. "Tyler suggested we might want to replace the whole system instead of repairing it," Dad continued. "He's been researching energy-efficient furnaces online, and he thinks we could save money long-term with a newer model. The replacement cost would be around $8,000. But Tyler calculated that the energy savings would pay for itself within 5 years. The suggestion that Tyler, who had never paid a utility bill in his adult life, was qualified to make major household financial decisions was infuriating. But what pushed me over the edge was Dad's next comment. "Tyler's really stepped up as the man of the house since his business ventures haven't worked out. He's been handling a lot of the household management and research for these kinds of decisions. We're lucky to have his expertise." Tyler's unemployment had been reframed as him stepping up as the man of the house. His internet research about furnaces was being treated as valuable expertise. Meanwhile, my actual professional expertise, my financial contributions that made their household possible, and my genuine care for their well-being were invisible and unacknowledged. I found myself agreeing to cover the furnace replacement cost while feeling disconnected from my own voice. After ending the call, I sat in my apartment looking around at the second-hand furniture and bare walls that reflected my actual financial situation. I was living like a struggling student while funding a comfortable middle-class lifestyle for my family, and they had convinced themselves that Tyler's theoretical contributions were more valuable than my tangible support. That night, for the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine what my life might look like if I kept my earnings from my own goals and dreams. I could afford a larger apartment, take vacations, build savings for my future, pursue additional education or professional development. I could live according to my actual income rather than the poverty-level existence that remained after supporting my family. But more than the financial possibilities, I imagined what it might feel like to be valued for who I was rather than what I could provide. To have my expertise respected, my achievements celebrated, my well-being prioritized by the people who claimed to love me. To be part of a family that supported each other's growth rather than one that enabled dysfunction while demanding sacrifice from its most successful member. The seed of change had been planted, though I didn't yet understand how dramatically my life was about to shift. The shift from years of enabling to decisive action happened over the course of 3 days in early November. The furnace replacement had been scheduled for the following week, another $8,000 that would flow from my bank account to maintain the comfortable lifestyle my family had grown accustomed to. But something fundamental had changed inside me after overhearing Tyler's restaurant conversation and enduring yet another family dinner where my contributions were invisible while his theoretical expertise was celebrated. That Wednesday evening, I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, staring at my online banking interface. The automatic payment system I had carefully constructed over the years was a marvel of financial organization. Every first of the month, $1,800 transferred automatically for their mortgage. The 15th brought utility payments totaling $400. Car payments, insurance premiums, medical costs, and credit card minimums all flowed seamlessly from my checking account to various creditors, ensuring my family never experienced the anxiety of unpaid bills or financial uncertainty. For the first time in years, I began calculating what my life would look like if those automatic transfers stopped. My monthly take-home pay of approximately $5,200 currently left me with less than $1,500 for my own living expenses after family obligations. Without those transfers, I would have the full amount available for my own rent, food, transportation, savings, and discretionary spending. The mathematical reality was staggering. I was living on less than 30% of my income while my family enjoyed a lifestyle funded by the remaining 70%. I opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting every automated payment, manual transfer, and emergency contribution I had made over the past 12 months. The mortgage payments totaling $21,600. Utility bills averaging $400 monthly for a total of $4,800 annually. Car payments for both vehicles totaling $900 monthly, $14,400 yearly. Insurance premiums across health, auto, and homeowners policies adding up to $8,200. Medical expenses, prescription costs, and unexpected repairs contributing another $6,000. Tyler's living expenses, including food, phone service, and entertainment, easily consuming $3,000 annually. The grand total was $66,000 in direct financial support, not including the various emergency transfers and business investments that had disappeared into Tyler's failed ventures. This amount represented more than my gross annual salary as a nurse practitioner, meaning I was essentially working full-time to support my family while living on what amounted to part-time wages. But the spreadsheet revealed something even more disturbing when I calculated the projected costs for the coming year. The furnace replacement would add $8,000 to my annual family expenses. Tyler had mentioned wanting to pursue certification in digital marketing, which would cost approximately $4,000 for courses and materials. Dad's ongoing back problems would likely require additional medical treatment not fully covered by insurance. Mom had talked about needing dental work that their insurance wouldn't cover completely. Conservative estimates suggested my family financial obligations would exceed $75,000 in the coming year, an amount that would require me to work substantial overtime and eliminate any possibility of building savings, taking vacations, or investing in my own professional development. I would be trapped in a cycle of working solely to fund a lifestyle I couldn't afford for myself, while receiving criticism rather than appreciation for my sacrifices. Thursday morning brought the clarity I had been searching for. I woke before my alarm and lay in bed watching the sunrise through my small bedroom window, feeling a sense of calm determination I hadn't experienced in years. The decision wasn't born from anger or resentment, though those emotions were certainly present. Instead, it came from a deep recognition that I had been participating in a system that was fundamentally unhealthy for everyone involved. My financial support wasn't helping my family become more independent or responsible. Instead, it was enabling Tyler's continued avoidance of employment while preventing my parents from making necessary adjustments to their lifestyle and expenses. Dad's back problems were real, but they didn't prevent him from seeking part-time work within his physical limitations. Mom's reduced hours were unfortunate, but there were other employment opportunities she hadn't pursued because my support made them unnecessary. Most importantly, Tyler's comfortable dependence on family financial support was preventing him from developing the skills and work habits necessary for adult independence. At 33 years old, he had never experienced the reality of supporting himself through consistent employment. His business ventures weren't serious attempts at entrepreneurship, they were expensive hobbies funded by someone else's labor. The psychological toll on my own development was equally concerning. I had become so focused on meeting my family's financial needs that I had lost sight of my own goals and aspirations. My professional achievements felt hollow because they were immediately converted into family obligations rather than personal progress. My income increases had become automatic family income increases, leaving me with no sense of forward momentum or personal growth. That afternoon, I called my clinic and requested Friday off, citing a family emergency that required immediate attention. The irony wasn't lost on me that managing my family's dysfunction had become an actual emergency requiring time away from caring for patients who genuinely needed my professional expertise. Friday morning, I began the systematic process of dismantling the financial support system I had constructed over 8 years. Each action was deliberate and documented, creating a clear paper trail of my decision-making process. I wasn't acting impulsively or emotionally, I was making a carefully considered choice about how to allocate my time, energy, and resources going forward. The mortgage payment scheduled for December 1st was the first to be cancelled. I logged into my bank's automatic payment system and removed the monthly transfer, taking a screenshot of the cancellation confirmation for my records. Next came the utility payments: electricity, gas, water, trash service, and internet. Each cancellation was documented with confirmation numbers and saved in a dedicated folder on my computer. Car payments for both vehicles were canceled next. Dad's truck payment of $450 monthly and Mom's sedan payment of $450 monthly, both of which I had been covering for over 3 years while they used the vehicles primarily for trips to the grocery store and doctor appointments. The insurance premiums followed: auto insurance for both cars, homeowner's insurance for the house, and the supplemental health insurance policy I had purchased when Dad's medical needs exceeded their basic coverage. Credit card payments were more complex because I had been making minimum payments on several cards they had maxed out during various financial crises. I canceled the automatic payments but made note of the outstanding balances, knowing these debts would now become their responsibility to manage or default on. The phone service cancellation included Tyler's line, which I had been paying for despite his minimal contribution to household expenses. The most emotionally difficult cancellation was the emergency fund I had established in a separate savings account, automatically transferring $200 monthly to cover unexpected expenses like medical bills, car repairs, or home maintenance. This fund had provided peace of mind for my parents, knowing they could handle minor crises without borrowing money or using credit cards. Closing this safety net felt like removing the last buffer between my family and financial reality. Each cancellation was accompanied by an email confirmation that I saved to a dedicated folder, creating a comprehensive record of the changes I was implementing. The process took nearly 4 hours, but when completed, I had systematically removed myself from every aspect of my family's financial infrastructure. The final step was crafting the message that would inform my family of these changes. I spent considerable time choosing my words carefully, wanting to communicate my decision clearly without unnecessarily inflaming an already difficult situation. The message needed to be firm but not cruel, honest but not deliberately hurtful. After multiple drafts, I composed a text message to my father that read, "Dad, I've made a difficult but necessary decision about my financial involvement with family expenses. Effective immediately, I will no longer be covering any bills, payments, or emergency costs. All automatic transfers have been canceled, and you'll need to resume responsibility for your mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance, and other obligations. This decision isn't made from anger, but from recognition that the current arrangement isn't healthy for any of us. I need to focus on my own financial stability and future planning." I included a follow-up message: "I understand this will create immediate challenges, and I'm sorry for the difficult timing. However, I believe this change is necessary for everyone's long-term well-being. I'm happy to discuss this decision when everyone has had time to process the situation." Before sending the messages, I turned off my phone and placed it in a drawer. I knew the immediate response would be emotional and likely manipulative, filled with guilt trips, accusations, and desperate attempts to reverse my decision. I needed space to maintain my resolve without being influenced by their initial reactions. That evening, I drove to a bookstore and spent hours browsing sections I hadn't visited in years: travel guides, investment planning, continuing education resources, home decorating magazines. For the first time in nearly a decade, I allowed myself to imagine spending my income on my own goals and interests. The sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying, like stepping into an identity I had forgotten existed. I purchased a financial planning workbook and a travel guide to New Zealand, a destination I had dreamed of visiting since nursing school but had never been able to afford. Sitting in the bookstore cafe with coffee and my new purchases, I began sketching out a budget based on my actual income rather than the poverty-level existence I had accepted while supporting my family. The numbers were revelatory. Without family financial obligations, I could afford a larger apartment in a safer neighborhood. I could build substantial savings within a year. I could pursue additional certifications that would advance my career. I could take vacations, buy quality furniture, invest in retirement accounts, and still have discretionary income for hobbies and entertainment. More importantly, I could begin building a life based on my own values and priorities rather than my family's dysfunction and entitlement. The relief I felt was profound, as if I had been holding my breath for 8 years and could finally exhale completely. When I returned home that evening, my phone remained in the drawer. Whatever crisis my message had created could wait until morning. For the first time in years, I went to sleep without worrying about upcoming bills, family financial emergencies, or Tyler's latest business ideas. I slept deeper and more peacefully than I had in months, knowing that I had finally chosen myself over a system that had never valued my contributions or respected my sacrifices. Saturday morning arrived with an unusual sense of peace. I woke naturally without an alarm, something that rarely happened during my demanding work schedule. My phone remained in the drawer where I had placed it the night before, and I spent the morning enjoying coffee and reading the travel guide to New Zealand I had purchased. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally calculating upcoming family expenses or worrying about which crisis would emerge next. The calm lasted until approximately 11 o'clock, when my landline began ringing with an urgency that suggested emergency. I had kept the landline primarily for work-related calls and rarely gave the number to family members, but Dad had it for true emergencies. The ringing persisted for nearly 2 minutes before stopping, then immediately resumed. After the fourth consecutive calling session, I reluctantly answered. "Rachel, thank God." Dad's voice was frantic, higher pitched than I had ever heard it. "We've been trying to reach you since yesterday evening. Your phone goes straight to voicemail. What's happening with the bank? They sent notices saying all the automatic payments were canceled. The mortgage company called this morning asking about December payment arrangements." I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. "Dad, I sent you a text message explaining the situation. I've decided to stop covering family expenses, effective immediately. All the automatic payments have been canceled." The silence stretched so long I wondered if the call had been disconnected. When Dad finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of disbelief and panic. "Rachel, you can't be serious. The mortgage payment is due in 10 days. We don't have $1,800 available. Your mother is beside herself. Tyler is trying to figure out solutions, but we need to discuss this as a family." "The decision has already been made," I replied, working to keep my voice calm and steady. "I understand this creates immediate challenges, but I can no longer maintain the current financial arrangement. You'll need to contact the bank about payment options or consider downsizing to something more affordable." "Downsizing?" Dad's voice cracked. "Rachel, we've lived in this house for 22 years. Your mother's entire social network is in this neighborhood. All our memories are here. You can't expect us to uproot our entire lives because you're having some kind of crisis." The accusation that I was having a crisis, rather than making a rational decision about unsustainable financial arrangements, revealed how completely my family had reframed the situation in their minds. In their version of reality, my decision to stop funding their lifestyle was evidence of mental instability rather than long overdue boundary setting. "This isn't a crisis," I explained. "This is a decision I've made after years of consideration. I need to focus on my own financial stability and future planning. I can't continue working primarily to support other people's expenses." The conversation devolved quickly from there. Dad alternated between pleading and accusations, describing the family's financial panic while suggesting I was being selfish and irresponsible. When I maintained my position, he handed the phone to Mom, whose approach was more emotionally manipulative. "Rachel, honey, I don't understand what's brought this on," Mom began, her voice tearful. "We've always been so grateful for your help. If we did something to upset you, we can discuss it and work things out. But canceling everything at once, right before Thanksgiving, feels so cruel. This is going to ruin the holidays for everyone." The timing reference was telling. My family's primary concern wasn't the sustainability of their financial situation or my well-being after years of sacrifice. Their focus was on how my decision would affect their immediate comfort and holiday plans. The fact that I had been struggling financially while working excessive hours to support their lifestyle wasn't part of their calculation. When I explained that the decision wasn't personal but practical, Mom's tone shifted to a more familiar guilt-inducing approach. "After everything we've done for you, raising you, supporting your education, being proud of your career success, this is how you repay us? By abandoning your family when we need you most?" The historical revision was breathtaking. My parents had provided basic necessities during my childhood, as all parents should, but my educational success had been achieved through my own efforts and financial sacrifices. My career achievements had received minimal acknowledgement from them, especially compared to their enthusiastic support for Tyler's failed business ventures. The suggestion that I owed them indefinite financial support as repayment for normal parenting was both manipulative and illogical. After ending the conversation with promises to think about their concerns, I retrieved my phone from the drawer to assess the full scope of their response. The notification screen was overwhelming: 66 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 18 voicemails accumulated over the previous 18 hours. The desperation was palpable even through the digital interface. The missed calls came in distinct waves, telling a story of escalating panic. Friday evening had brought a dozen calls from Dad, each voicemail increasingly worried as he tried to understand why I wasn't responding. Late Friday night, Tyler had called repeatedly, his messages shifting from confusion to anger as he processed the implications of canceled payments. Saturday morning had brought a barrage of calls from all three family members, sometimes simultaneously, as they coordinated their response to the crisis. The text messages revealed their emotional progression and strategic thinking. Initial messages were concerned and questioning: "Rachel, call me back immediately. Something's wrong with the bank." As hours passed without response, the tone became more desperate: "Please answer your phone. We need to talk about this before things get worse." By Saturday morning, the messages had turned accusatory: "Your selfishness is going to destroy this family. How can you do this to people who love you?" Tyler's messages were particularly revealing. His initial texts focused on practical concerns about internet service and his phone being disconnected. But as the reality of the situation became clear, his messages revealed his true perspective on our family dynamics. "You're seriously going to screw over your own family because you're mad about something? This is psychotic behavior, Rachel. Mom and Dad don't deserve this." The most telling message came from Tyler late Friday night: "I get that you're upset about me not having a regular job, but destroying everyone's financial security isn't going to motivate me to work at McDonald's. This is just going to make everything worse for everyone, including you." The text revealed his assumption that my decision was designed to manipulate his employment choices rather than protect my own financial well-being. The voicemails provided the most complete picture of their emotional state and problem-solving attempts. Mom's early messages were tearful and confused, focused on whether I was safe and why I wasn't responding to calls. Dad's messages were more practical, discussing specific bills and deadlines while asking for immediate callback to resolve what he assumed was a misunderstanding. But Tyler's voicemails revealed the depth of his entitlement and lack of awareness about our family's financial reality. In one particularly long message, he outlined his theory that I was having a mental breakdown triggered by work stress, and that family members needed to intervene before I made irreversible decisions. In another, he suggested that my decision was motivated by jealousy of his entrepreneurial freedom and that I was trying to force him into conventional employment out of spite. Most disturbing was Tyler's message proposing solutions that maintained his comfortable lifestyle while shifting financial responsibility to other family members. He had contacted our elderly grandmother about providing temporary financial assistance, approached Uncle Mike about co-signing loans, and researched government assistance programs that might cover some household expenses. Every proposed solution involved finding alternative funding sources rather than addressing the fundamental problem of adult family members who weren't supporting themselves. The weekend continued with increasingly desperate contact attempts. When I didn't respond to calls and texts, they began reaching out through other channels. My work email received messages marked urgent, asking me to contact family immediately regarding emergency situations. Social media platforms I rarely used showed friend requests and messages from extended family members who had been recruited to help establish contact. Mom had apparently called my clinic, telling the receptionist that she needed to reach me about a family medical emergency. When the clinic staff explained they couldn't provide personal contact information, she left detailed messages about needing to discuss urgent family matters. The fact that my family was willing to involve my workplace in their financial drama showed how desperate the situation had become. By Sunday evening, the tone of their messages had shifted from panic to anger and blame. Dad's texts accused me of financial abuse, claiming that suddenly canceling support without warning was equivalent to elder abuse. Mom's messages focused on emotional manipulation, describing how my decision was affecting her blood pressure and sleep patterns. Tyler's texts were openly hostile, calling me selfish and suggesting that my career success had made me arrogant and uncaring toward family needs. The most revealing development was their coordination of a unified response strategy. Sunday night brought simultaneous messages from all three family members, each delivering the same basic ultimatum: either I restored financial support immediately, or they would be forced to take drastic measures to protect themselves. Dad mentioned consulting with lawyers about family financial obligations. Mom threatened to contact my professional licensing board about my mental fitness to practice nursing. Tyler suggested he would have no choice but to move in with our elderly grandmother, potentially damaging her health with the stress of additional household responsibilities. Each threat revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of both legal realities and ethical boundaries. I had no legal obligation to support financially capable adults, regardless of family relationships. My professional licensing couldn't be affected by personal financial decisions that didn't impact patient care. Tyler's threat to burden our grandmother was emotional blackmail designed to force my compliance through guilt rather than addressing his own responsibility for self-support. The desperation underlying their threats was obvious, but so was their refusal to consider sustainable solutions. None of their messages mentioned Dad seeking employment within his physical limitations. None addressed Mom pursuing additional work opportunities or returning to full-time employment. Most significantly, none acknowledged Tyler's need to develop consistent employment and adult independence. Instead, their focus remained entirely on restoring the financial support system that had enabled years of irresponsible spending and avoided necessary lifestyle adjustments. They wanted to return to the comfortable arrangement where my sacrifice funded their choices, without acknowledging the unsustainability of that dynamic or the personal cost I had been paying. Monday morning brought a new wave of contact attempts, but the tone had shifted from desperation to strategic manipulation. The messages now focused on upcoming holiday plans and family traditions, emphasizing how my decision would ruin Thanksgiving and Christmas celebrations. They had apparently decided that emotional manipulation through holiday guilt would be more effective than direct financial appeals. Mom's Monday morning voicemail was particularly calculated. "Rachel, honey, I know you're upset about something, but please don't let whatever's bothering you destroy our family traditions. Your cousins are asking about Thanksgiving plans, and I don't know what to tell them." Tyler was so excited about sharing his new business ideas with everyone, and Dad was looking forward to watching football with Uncle Mike. "Please call me back so we can fix this before it's too late." The message revealed their continued inability to understand that my decision wasn't about being upset or wanting to ruin holidays. It was about establishing sustainable financial boundaries and refusing to continue a pattern that was destroying my own economic security. Their focus on holiday disruptions rather than long-term financial health showed how superficial their understanding of the situation remained. As I listened to their increasingly desperate and manipulative messages, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the relationships that had been damaged by years of enabling and financial dysfunction. Relief that I had finally chosen to prioritize my own well-being over their comfort and entitlement. The 66 missed calls represented more than desperate attempts to restore financial support. They revealed a family system in crisis, forced to confront realities they had avoided for years through my willingness to absorb their financial responsibilities. The panic in their voices reflected not just immediate money concerns, but the collapse of assumptions about their entitlement to my earnings and sacrifice. For the first time in nearly a decade, my family would be forced to take responsibility for their own financial choices and develop sustainable solutions for their lifestyle and expenses. The outcome remained uncertain, but my role as enabler and financial provider had ended permanently. By Tuesday morning, the constant barrage of calls and messages had become background noise that I could ignore while focusing on my actual responsibilities. I had returned to work Monday with a sense of clarity and energy I hadn't experienced in years. Without the mental burden of managing my family's financial crises, I found myself more present with patients and more engaged with my colleagues at the clinic. During lunch break on Tuesday, my friend and colleague Sarah noticed the change in my demeanor. We had worked together for 3 years, but our relationship had remained mostly professional due to my limited availability for social activities. Most invitations to dinner, weekend events, or professional development opportunities had been declined because of family obligations or financial constraints. You seem different today, Sarah observed as we sat in the clinic break room. More relaxed somehow. Did something good happen? Her genuine interest in my well-being was striking compared to my family's focus on what I could provide rather than how I was doing personally. For the first time in years, I found myself sharing honestly about my personal situation. I explained the decision to stop financially supporting my family and the intense backlash I was experiencing. Sarah listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions about my feelings and concerns rather than immediately offering advice or criticism. That sounds incredibly difficult, she said after I finished explaining the situation. But also brave. I can't imagine working as hard as you do while supporting 3 other adults financially. When do you ever get to enjoy the results of your own labor? The question highlighted something I hadn't fully acknowledged. I had no recent memory of spending money on myself without guilt or anxiety about family obligations. Sarah's response was so different from what I had expected that I found myself opening up further about the isolation I had been experiencing. She immediately invited me to join her and several other colleagues for dinner Friday evening, emphasizing that it was a casual gathering without financial pressure. We usually just order pizza and complain about difficult patients, she laughed. But it's become a nice way to decompress from the week. The prospect of social interaction without family drama or financial stress felt both appealing and foreign. I realized I hadn't socialized with peers in months, maybe longer. My free time had been consumed by family obligations, extra work shifts to cover their expenses, and the mental exhaustion that comes from managing other people's financial crises while neglecting your own needs. Wednesday brought an unexpected source of support when Dr. Martinez, the clinic's medical director, asked to speak with me privately. I initially worried that my family's contact attempts with the clinic had created professional complications, but her concern was entirely different. Rachel, I wanted to check in about your professional development goals, Dr. Martinez began. Your clinical skills and patient rapport have been consistently excellent, and I've been thinking about opportunities that might interest you. We're expanding our community outreach programs, and I believe you'd be perfect for leading our new diabetes education initiative. The conversation revealed opportunities one hadn't considered because my time and mental energy had been consumed by family financial management. Dr. Martinez explained that the community outreach position would involve additional responsibilities but also a significant salary increase and opportunities for specialized training. The role would require some travel to rural clinics and evening community presentations, commitments I had never been able to make due to family obligations. I know you've been selective about additional responsibilities in the past, Dr. Martinez continued, but your availability seems to have improved recently. Would this be something you'd want to discuss further? Her observation about my improved availability was accurate. Without constant family crises demanding my attention, I could finally consider professional advancement opportunities. The salary increase associated with the position would be substantial, approximately $15,000 annually. For the first time in years, that increase would benefit my own financial security rather than expanding the support I provided to my family. The realization was both exciting and sobering, highlighting how much my career growth had been limited by external financial obligations. Thursday evening brought another unexpected connection when my neighbor Jessica knocked on my door with a small crisis. Her elderly cat had developed concerning symptoms, and her regular veterinarian was closed until morning. As a healthcare professional, I was able to assess the situation and recommend an emergency animal clinic, then offered to drive her since she was too upset to navigate safely. The experience was revelatory in its simplicity. Jessica was genuinely grateful for my help and expertise, expressing appreciation in ways that felt authentic rather than manipulative. When I refused her offer of gas money, she insisted on making me dinner the following week as a thank you gesture. The interaction was reciprocal and respectful, based on mutual care rather than one-sided obligation. I had no idea you were a nurse practitioner, Jessica said during the drive to the emergency clinic. That's amazing. You must see so many interesting cases. Her interest in my professional life was refreshing, focused on my expertise and experiences rather than what I could provide financially. During our conversation, Jessica mentioned her own career challenges as a freelance graphic designer and her recent decision to end a relationship that had become financially exploitative. My ex-boyfriend expected me to cover most of our shared expenses because I worked from home and he assumed that meant I had unlimited availability and resources, she explained. It took me way too long to realize that his financial irresponsibility wasn't my problem to solve. The parallel to my own situation was striking, though Jessica had recognized the problem and made changes much sooner than I had. Her perspective on financial boundaries in relationships provided validation that my decision wasn't selfish or unusual. Many people struggled with family members or partners who expected unlimited financial support without reciprocal responsibility. Friday evening's dinner with my colleagues transformed into one of the most enjoyable social experiences I'd had in years. The group included Sarah, 2 other nurse practitioners, a physician assistant, and a medical assistant, all women dealing with various professional and personal challenges while maintaining careers in healthcare. The conversation ranged from frustrating patient cases to professional development opportunities, weekend plans, and relationship dynamics. When someone mentioned financial stress related to student loans, I found myself sharing my recent decision to stop supporting family members financially. The response was uniformly supportive, with several colleagues sharing similar experiences of setting boundaries with family members who had developed unrealistic expectations. My brother assumed I'd pay for his wedding because I'm a nurse practitioner, shared Lisa, one of the physician assistants. When I explained that having a good salary doesn't mean having unlimited money for other people's choices, he accused me of being selfish. But guess what? He figured out how to fund his own wedding when he realized I wasn't going to do it for him. The stories revealed a common pattern among successful women in healthcare, family members who viewed their earnings as community resources rather than individual achievements. Several colleagues had dealt with similar expectations and had learned to set boundaries to protect their own financial security and mental health. Most importantly, the group offered ongoing support for maintaining boundaries despite family pressure. The guilt trips get easier to ignore, Sarah assured me. Especially when you start seeing how much better your life becomes when you're not constantly stressed about other people's financial problems. The weekend provided the first taste of what life might look like with my full income available for my own goals and interests. I spent Saturday morning apartment hunting, looking at one-bedroom places in safer neighborhoods that would have been financially impossible while supporting my family. The apartments I toured had amenities I had forgotten to want: in-unit laundry, updated kitchens, dedicated parking spaces, proximity to hiking trails and restaurants. One apartment particularly caught my attention, a bright one-bedroom with large windows overlooking a small park. The rent was $800 more than my current place, but well within my budget without family financial obligations. The neighborhood was walkable, with a coffee shop, bookstore, and several restaurants within easy distance. For the first time in years, I could imagine a living situation that reflected my actual income and preferences rather than the poverty-level existence I had accepted while funding my family's lifestyle. Sunday brought another revelation when I visited a local hiking trail I had wanted to explore for months but had never found time for due to family obligations. The physical activity and natural setting provided perspective on how much stress I had been carrying. Without the constant mental burden of managing other people's financial crises, I felt lighter and more present in the moment. During the hike, I met another solo hiker named Jennifer who was training for a backpacking trip through parts of the Rocky Mountains. We ended up hiking together for several miles, discussing our shared interest in outdoor activities and travel. Jennifer was a physical therapist who had recently returned from a solo trip to Iceland, an adventure that would have been impossible for me while supporting my family financially. I used to think I couldn't afford to travel, Jennifer explained, but then I realized I was spending money on things that didn't actually make me happy. Once I cut out the unnecessary expenses and started prioritizing experiences over stuff, I discovered I could afford much more than I thought. Her perspective reinforced my growing awareness that I had been prioritizing other people's comfort over my own dreams and goals. The conversation naturally led to discussing family expectations and financial boundaries. Jennifer had dealt with similar pressure from relatives who assumed her healthcare salary meant unlimited resources for family support. I had to learn that helping people sometimes means not helping them, she said. Constantly bailing out family members who won't take responsibility for their own choices isn't actually helping anyone in the long run. By Sunday evening, I had experienced more genuine social connection and personal enjoyment in 1 week than I had in months of family-focused interactions. The difference was striking. My colleagues and new acquaintances were interested in me as a person, appreciated my expertise without taking it for granted, and offered reciprocal support rather than one-sided obligation. The contrast with my family's response to my boundary setting was profound. While my family focused on what I was no longer providing and how my decision affected their comfort, my friends and colleagues celebrated my choice to prioritize my own well-being. They saw my decision as evidence of growth and self-respect rather than selfishness and abandonment. Monday morning brought a call from Tyler that I decided to answer, curious about whether the weekend had brought any perspective or problem-solving attempts. The conversation was brief but revealing. Tyler had spent the weekend researching bankruptcy options and government assistance programs rather than employment opportunities. His focus remained entirely on finding alternative funding sources to maintain his current lifestyle rather than addressing the fundamental problem of his financial dependence. "I don't understand why you're doing this to us," Tyler said, his voice carrying the same entitlement that had characterized his approach to family resources for years. "Mom's health is suffering from the stress, Dad's talking about selling the house, and I'm going to have to move in with Grandma. Is that really what you want?" The question revealed Tyler's continued inability to connect his own choices with the family's financial situation. In his mind, my decision to stop funding their lifestyle was the cause of their problems, rather than the unsustainable spending and lack of personal responsibility that had created their dependency in the first place. "What I want," I replied calmly, "is for all of us to take responsibility for our own financial situations. You're 33 years old, Tyler. It's time to support yourself through consistent employment rather than expecting family members to fund your lifestyle." The conversation ended quickly when Tyler realized I wasn't going to be manipulated back into the financial support role. That evening, as I sat in my apartment reviewing the lease application for the new place, I felt a sense of anticipation I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since college, I was making decisions based on my own preferences and financial capabilities rather than what remained after supporting my family's choices. The week had shown me what relationships could look like when based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than financial obligation and emotional manipulation. My colleagues celebrated my achievements, my new acquaintances appreciated my expertise, and my neighbor treated my help as a gift rather than an expectation. Most importantly, I had begun to remember who I was beyond the role of family financial provider. I was a skilled healthcare professional with interests, goals, and dreams that deserved consideration and investment. I was someone worthy of friendships based on reciprocal care rather than one-sided sacrifice. I was a woman capable of building a life that reflected my own values and priorities rather than constantly adapting to other people's dysfunction and entitlement. The alternative reality I was discovering wasn't just about having more money available for personal use. It was about reclaiming my identity, energy, and future from a family system that had consumed all three while offering criticism rather than appreciation in return. 6 months after that devastating text message changed everything, I sit in my new apartment overlooking the park, preparing for a Thanksgiving that will be completely different from any I've experienced in my adult life. The apartment lease was signed 3 months ago, after I realized that my family's financial crisis had become their opportunity to develop actual sustainability rather than continued dependence on my sacrifice. The intervening months revealed the true depth of dysfunction I had been enabling through my financial support. Once my family could no longer rely on my automatic payments and emergency funds, they were forced to confront reality in ways they had avoided for years. The process was messy, uncomfortable, and ultimately necessary for everyone involved. Dad's response was the most practical of the three. Within 6 weeks of losing my financial support, he had secured part-time employment at a hardware store, work that accommodated his back limitations while providing steady income. He also contacted a financial counselor through their credit union to develop a realistic budget based on their actual household income rather than the fantasy lifestyle my contributions had made possible. The house, as I had predicted, was sold within 4 months. Not because they faced immediate foreclosure, but because Dad's practical assessment of their situation revealed that maintaining a 4-bedroom house on their combined part-time incomes was financially impossible. They moved to a 2-bedroom townhouse in a nearby neighborhood, reducing their housing costs by nearly half while maintaining proximity to their established community connections. Mom's adjustment was more emotionally challenging but equally necessary. Her initial response had been to treat the situation as a temporary crisis that would resolve once I came to my senses and resumed financial support. When it became clear that my decision was permanent, she was forced to address her own relationship with money and responsibility. The most significant change was Mom's return to full-time employment. After Dad's honest conversation about their financial reality, she secured a position at a larger accounting firm, using skills she had maintained through part-time work but had never fully utilized due to the comfortable buffer my support provided. Her income nearly doubled, and she discovered professional satisfaction she had forgotten was possible. Tyler's journey was the most dramatic and, ultimately, the most important for his long-term development. The first few months were difficult as he exhausted his remaining options for avoiding traditional employment. He briefly moved in with our elderly grandmother, but her fixed income and small apartment made clear that this arrangement couldn't provide the comfortable lifestyle he had enjoyed while living with our parents. The turning point came when Tyler's girlfriend, Jessica, issued her own ultimatum about their relationship. She had been tolerating his unemployment and lack of direction because she believed his entrepreneurial ventures would eventually succeed. But once it became clear that family financial support was no longer available, she demanded that Tyler demonstrate commitment to supporting himself through consistent work. Tyler's initial response was to blame me for ruining his relationship and destroying his business potential. But when Jessica remained firm about her expectations, he was finally forced to address the reality that his lifestyle had been unsustainable regardless of family support. At 33 years old, he applied for his first entry-level position in over a decade. The job he eventually secured was at a home improvement store, work that utilized his practical skills while providing the structure and accountability he had never developed through his entrepreneurial ventures. The position wasn't glamorous, but it offered steady income, health insurance, and opportunities for advancement based on performance rather than theoretical potential. More importantly, Tyler began developing work habits and interpersonal skills that his years of comfortable unemployment had prevented him from learning. He discovered that he actually enjoyed helping customers solve practical problems and that his knowledge of home renovation projects was valuable in a retail environment focused on those needs. The most surprising development was Tyler's growing appreciation for the stability and predictability of regular employment. His previous contempt for traditional jobs had been based largely on his inexperience with the satisfaction that comes from competent performance and reliable income. Once he experienced the dignity of supporting himself through his own labor, his perspective on work and responsibility shifted significantly. 3 months into his employment, Tyler called me with an apology that felt genuine rather than manipulative. He acknowledged that his years of dependency had prevented him from developing adult independence and that my financial support, while well-intentioned, had enabled his avoidance of necessary growth and responsibility. "I didn't understand that you were working so hard to support all of us," Tyler admitted during our conversation. "I thought your income was just naturally high enough to cover everything easily. I never calculated how much of your actual earnings you were giving us, or what that meant for your own life and goals." The apology included recognition that his business ventures had been expensive hobbies rather than serious entrepreneurial attempts. "I was treating your money like it was play money for my ideas," he continued. "I never had to face the real consequences of failure because you always absorbed the losses. Having to support myself has made me understand the value of money in a way I never did before." Tyler's transformation wasn't just about employment. He had also begun addressing the underlying attitudes and assumptions that had made his dependency feel justified. He started paying rent to our parents for his childhood bedroom during the transition period, contributing to household expenses rather than consuming family resources. He developed a budget based on his actual income and began understanding the connection between work, earnings, and lifestyle choices. Most significantly, Tyler had begun making plans for independent living that didn't rely on family financial assistance. He was saving money for an apartment deposit and researching continuing education opportunities that would improve his employment prospects. For the first time in his adult life, he was taking responsibility for his own future rather than expecting family members to fund his dreams and aspirations. The family dynamics shifted dramatically once everyone was contributing to their own support rather than relying on my earnings. Holiday gatherings became more balanced, with conversations focusing on shared experiences rather than Tyler's latest business ideas or my family's financial needs. Dad's pride in his new employment was evident, and Mom's enthusiasm for her expanded professional role brought energy she hadn't displayed in years. My own transformation was equally significant. The professional development opportunity Dr. Martinez had offered led to specialized training in diabetes education and community health outreach. The additional responsibilities and salary increase allowed me to build substantial savings while living comfortably according to my actual income level. More importantly, I discovered interests and goals that had been dormant during my years of family financial management. I enrolled in a Spanish language course to better serve the clinic's diverse patient population. I joined a hiking group and began exploring Colorado's outdoor opportunities. I started planning a trip to New Zealand, the destination I had dreamed about but never believed was financially possible. The apartment overlooking the park became a symbol of the life I was finally able to build based on my own priorities and preferences. The space reflected my personality and interests rather than the minimalist existence I had maintained while funding my family's lifestyle. I purchased quality furniture, hung artwork that spoke to me, and created a home environment that felt nurturing rather than temporary. The professional relationships I had developed with colleagues became genuine friendships based on mutual respect and shared interests. Social activities were no longer rare treats squeezed between family obligations, but regular opportunities for connection and enjoyment. I discovered that I was someone people enjoyed spending time with when I wasn't constantly stressed about financial crises and family drama. Most importantly, I learned to recognize and value my own worth independent of what I could provide for other people. Years of measuring my value through financial contributions and problem solving had created a distorted sense of self that required significant conscious effort to correct. I began therapy to address the underlying beliefs that had made excessive family support feel like love rather than enabling. The therapeutic process revealed how my childhood experiences of earning approval through achievement had evolved into adult patterns of earning love through financial sacrifice. Learning to set boundaries and prioritize my own well-being required developing new skills and perspectives that felt foreign initially but became increasingly natural with practice. Dr. Chen, my therapist, helped me understand that my family's initial resistance to boundary setting was predictable rather than evidence that I was being cruel or selfish. When you change the rules of a dysfunctional system, she explained, the other participants will initially try to restore the previous arrangement because it was comfortable for them. Real change requires maintaining boundaries despite pressure to return to old patterns. The guilt I had expected to feel about my family's financial adjustment never materialized in the way I had anticipated. Instead, I felt relief and pride as I watched them develop capabilities and independence they had never been motivated to pursue while my support was available. Their initial anger and desperation transformed into respect and appreciation once they realized the changes were permanent and beneficial. This Thanksgiving will be the first time in nearly a decade that I'll celebrate with my family as an equal participant rather than the invisible financial provider. We'll gather at my parents' new townhouse, a space that reflects their actual means and capabilities rather than a lifestyle artificially maintained through my sacrifice. Tyler will join us after his shift at the home improvement store, proudly contributing a side dish he purchased with his own earnings. Dad will share stories about customers at the hardware store and his satisfaction with contributing to household income again. Mom will discuss her expanded responsibilities at the accounting firm and her excitement about professional growth opportunities she's pursuing. The conversation will focus on our actual lives and achievements rather than theoretical business ventures and financial crises. For the first time in years, I'll attend a family gathering without mental calculations about upcoming bills or concern about which emergency might require my financial intervention. More importantly, I'll be celebrating with family members who have learned to appreciate my presence for who I am rather than what I can provide. The respect and gratitude they express now feels genuine because it's based on our relationship rather than my financial contributions. Tyler's acknowledgement of my sacrifice and his commitment to independence demonstrated growth that wouldn't have been possible while he remained comfortable in dependency. Looking ahead, I feel optimistic about family relationships that are finally based on mutual respect and individual responsibility. The financial crisis that seemed so devastating 6 months ago became the catalyst for positive changes that benefited everyone involved. My parents developed financial literacy and employment skills they had abandoned during years of comfortable reliance on my support. Tyler discovered work ethic and personal satisfaction he had never experienced through his entrepreneurial fantasies. My own future feels expansive in ways I had forgotten were possible. Professional goals that had been deferred due to family obligations are now achievable. Travel plans that had been dreams are becoming concrete itineraries. Relationships that had been limited by financial stress and time constraints are deepening into meaningful connections. The savings account that grows each month represents more than financial security. It symbolizes the life I'm building through my own choices and priorities rather than circumstances imposed by other people's dysfunction and entitlement. Each dollar saved is proof that I have value beyond what I can provide for others and that my dreams and goals deserve investment and attention. If you're struggling with similar family financial dynamics, please understand that you're not responsible for supporting financially capable adults, regardless of family relationships. Love doesn't require sacrifice that damages your own well-being and future security. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable behavior that prevents people from developing necessary life skills and independence. Setting boundaries with family members who have become dependent on your financial support will likely result in initial anger, manipulation, and accusations of selfishness. These responses are predictable attempts to restore the previous arrangement and don't reflect the actual impact of your decisions. Healthy families adapt to boundaries and develop sustainable solutions. Dysfunctional families escalate pressure and refuse to take responsibility for their own circumstances. The guilt you might feel about family members' financial struggles is understandable but misplaced. You didn't create their dependency by being successful and generous. You enabled their dependency by absorbing consequences they should have experienced themselves. Allowing people to face the natural results of their choices isn't cruel. It's necessary for their growth and your own well-being. Professional counseling can provide valuable support during the boundary-setting process. Therapists experienced in family dynamics can help you distinguish between legitimate concerns and manipulative guilt trips. They can also assist with developing the emotional skills necessary to maintain boundaries despite family pressure and your own conditioning to prioritize other people's comfort over your own needs. Building relationships outside your family system is crucial for maintaining perspective and receiving appropriate support. Friends and colleagues who value you for who you are rather than what you provide offer examples of healthy relationship dynamics that can feel foreign if you've been focused primarily on dysfunctional family interactions. Financial independence isn't selfish, it's responsible. You can't effectively help other people if you're struggling to support yourself. Building your own security creates a foundation from which you can offer appropriate assistance without compromising your well-being or enabling destructive patterns. Remember that family members who truly care about your well-being will support your boundary-setting efforts even if they're initially disappointed about losing financial support. People who respond to your boundaries with sustained anger, manipulation, or threats are demonstrating that they value what you provide more than who you are as a person. The life you build by prioritizing your own financial health and emotional well-being isn't selfish or cruel. It's the life you deserve, and it often becomes the foundation for healthier family relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. Sometimes stepping away from dysfunctional dynamics is the only way to create space for genuine love and appreciation to develop. Your worth isn't determined by your willingness to sacrifice for other people. Your value doesn't depend on solving other people's problems or funding their choices. You deserve relationships that celebrate your success rather than exploiting it, that appreciate your contributions rather than demanding them, and that support your growth rather than limiting it to serve their comfort. This Thanksgiving, I'm grateful for the courage to choose myself over a system that was destroying my well-being while preventing my family from developing necessary life skills. I'm thankful for the relationships I've built with people who value me appropriately and the life I'm creating based on my own priorities and dreams. Most importantly, I'm grateful for the lesson that love doesn't require self-destruction and that the most generous thing you can sometimes do is refuse to enable other people's dysfunction. True family support involves helping people become their best selves, not subsidizing their avoidance of responsibility and growth. If my story resonates with you, know that change is possible and that you deserve a life built on your own terms rather than other people's expectations and entitlement. The courage to set boundaries might be the most loving gift you can give both yourself and the family members who have become comfortable in dysfunction. You are worth more than what you can provide. Your dreams matter. Your financial security is important. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply refusing to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.